And welcome to another fun-filled edition of the Man Cave Confidential video podcast number 3. On today's show, we're going to be talking about a lot of things. Specifically, it's a really bad time to be an entertainer in your 60s. They're dropping like flies, and it's making the shark laugh, but he should be crying about that.
I'm crying. These are tears of crying, or however that's phrased.
Tears of sorrow. We're going to be talking about Netflix. They're going to try to use, if you're using a VPN, Netflix doesn't like that. Major League Baseball comes out with a big announcement saying they're doing great things with their streaming. BS. We're going to call BS on it. We're going to be talking about keeping your personal information safe because the government is trying to get it. Things you can do. That and much more. Go grab yourself an ice cold frosty brew, or if it's really cold where you are too, a hot chocolate, maybe pour a little bit of Jameson's or something into there, and get ready. The Man Cave Confidential show is starting now. Everybody bow. You know, we always feel like we have to have the intro music. And as a video podcast, we're kind of feeling our way through. I am Darren O'Neill. He is FJ Shark. And for the next hour or so, we're going to be talking about things guys talk about. That's the whole idea of the Man Cave. I don't know how much explanation it needs. For some people, maybe more than others. But it would be stuff that we would normally be talking about without recording it. We figured, hey, what the hell? Record it.
Whenever we talk, it's a podcast. Somebody record this.
Right. Maybe people will be interested. Maybe you won't. If you want to join in on the fun, you can reach out to us at mailbag and mancaveconfidential.com. You can get us on Twitter. FJ Shark is at FJ Shark, spelled the same way it is. And I am at Darren O'Neill, again, spelled the same way it is. If you're taking one L off, you'll get an Olympic Irish boxer. He's probably more entertaining than I am, but he can help you up. So just feel free to, follow him as well.
If you think of it, this is just an extension of in high school when we used to take over the foyer before school. At least as seniors, we got to be in the foyer,
right? And
it would be like our whole table. So it's like that was the discussion. So now we're just recording it, and more people are in on it,
right? Because now we have the technology to beam that out to everybody. You know what? I didn't start the audio recording. This is the let me start that now. It's okay. It just means that the first couple seconds of the show is probably going to sound worse than it will from now on, because we found that we can get better audio live here in recording it locally. No big deal. It's one of those things, like I said, we're feeling our way on this video podcast. Really liking the concept so far of using the Google Hangouts, which is once we start doing live shows, we'll invite you along, come along in on the Google Hangouts to do live chat rooms, video, and all that.
I'm sure our viewers would like to know, in Google Hangouts, is there a way to do PowerPoint, or is it like video screen, like talking head only? Can you swap back and forth between, like if you were doing a training?
Yeah, well, you can share a screen too. So you can, if you have multi-monitors, as I do up in the office, you can share those sides. So if you have one screen which is showing you what's going on in the Google Hangouts, so you can see the other person, you can see the other people in the Hangouts, you can put things on one of those side screens and then swap over to that. And you could also, I'm sure, we just never tried it, you can, I'm sure, share the main screen on this as well. So if you go over to here, let's see, we have that's invite people, adjust bandwidth settings. There was some way to share a screen, maybe on the side here, screen share on the side. If it wants to share either just Google Hangouts or the entire screen. So if I hit entire screen, hit share, well, now you're probably going to be, this is this is the mirror to infinity, because
I'm in the fun house.
Right. Well, that's exactly what you're seeing there, because you've got the, and if I click on something like that, you could see, about this Mac system preferences. So you should be seeing, my screen. And if I wanted to open up something different, so if I open up Firefox, you should now see that as a full screen with, different things. So if I open up my, Twitter. So you should be seeing, my screen. Right. And of course, now I'm like hearing myself talking again.
So you would just flip through a PowerPoint presentation if you're doing that.
Yes.
That's how it'd be useful for other people who wanted to get in on this, who didn't necessarily want to do a hangout or a podcast show, but they'd want to do some kind of a training. So
PowerPoint presentation if you're doing that. Now, So what is okay now? Is this like
people are quoting myself?
how is this? Okay, now do we get okay? Are we still there?
I'm here.
So this is what happens when you experiment on the air. So stop sharing, and now
There we go.
I should
Stop
be back.
sharing.
Yes, we've shared a little bit too much.
Every kindergartner needs to hear, quit sharing so much.
Right, you're sharing
Be more
too
selfish,
much.
damn it.
Yes. Since we did our last show, actually, David Bowie, was that before or after? It's been very, very recently. David Bowie passing away and Glenn Frey passing away, both in their 60s, both icons of the music world, and really for this day and age to die in your 60s and not have it be from a drug overdose or something like that is it's much too young. Although I'm pretty sure both of these guys at one point or another had ran the candle very much so at both ends.
Right. Well, then also I heard another one. I can't remember the band, but it was a lesser known band. And he was 65 and he passed away in the last, I think right after or right before Glenn Frey. So it's like, what is this? We've got like, I think it's up to, somebody said 15 celebrities already in 2016 already. It's like the In Memoriam is going to have to be its own show for the Grammys and the Emmys and what's the other one? For the Oscars, everything. It's like it already takes like I think 20, 30 minutes to go through the In Memoriam.
Right. Award shows. I don't see the point of award shows. I really don't, because you're talking about, I come from more of a music background where I used to watch more of the the music awards, whether it be the wide range American Music Awards or the Grammys or, the Country Music Awards or whatever it, may be. Every one of these shows is so political. It's all who's connected. And the thing that gets me is music is such, as are movies and books, most sorts of entertainment are so very personal. And it really goes to what your tastes are and what you enjoy. I don't give a crap who gets an award for it. I like what I like. Right. I'm not going to like something more because they won an award for it. I mean, it's great for the artists, I guess, because maybe they get a little bit more publicity. But I just don't understand the draw of the award shows. And then you have, like what's going on with the Oscars now. There were no African Americans that were put up for lead roles. Now it's like, we're going to call for a boycott. It's like, really? I mean, this comes down to things that we've talked about going back to the very first audio podcast we did where, every kid gets a trophy no matter how well they do. And, it's getting ridiculous to me where it's like, what, if there is a season or two, I mean, there's only like 4 or 5 people put up for all of these categories in the Oscars. And to say that people are making a decision based on race is absolutely ridiculous, because then tell you what, when you go to the BET Awards, how many white people do you have up for awards? When you go to the NBA and it's like, well, we have to choose. I mean, hockey does, the 3 stars of the game. Well, we have to, it has to be diversified. I don't care how people actually played. This needs to be diversified. Or if you're talking about who the best players are, in the NHL, most likely they're going to be white. Who are the best players in the NBA? Most likely they're probably going to be black. But to be like, well, no, we got to put a white guy on that list, man, because otherwise it's racist. You can't just list. It's getting ridiculous. I mean, I don't understand why racism is getting worse and why all of this is happening, especially in a political climate where we've had an African-American president for the past 7 years. I mean, everybody wants to make the country out to be racist, but this guy won in a landslide. You can't have a racist country that elects an African-American man as president in a landslide unless you're going to admit that the election was rigged. And that's a whole nother bag of marbles that we don't need to go into on this particular show. But so I never understood that, and I never understood the award shows. But, I was a fan of David Bowie, not a super fan.
Wait, before you go there with the thing with everybody gets a trophy.
Right.
My daughter was just doing a paper on this where there's a term for it where the teachers are now in fear of failing a child because not that they think they're going to get shot. I mean, maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they think that, but they are in fear of losing their own job because in a review it'll be like, oh well, you had too many failing grades. You must stink as a teacher, and it works against them. Whereas we've all seen that little cartoon where it was like years ago. It was like a parent teacher conference, and the teacher saying, here's what's wrong with your child, and the parents are scolding the kid. And then it says today, and it shows that the child's failing, and the parents are there pointing the finger at the teacher, blaming them. It's like, well, which one is it? Because you can't, there has to be some responsibility. It can't be, here's my child, fix them. All this starts at home with spending enough time with your child and then letting them deal with disappointment, failure, all that, so that they don't go through school always getting a trophy, always competing until everybody wins. That's not the way the real world works. And then one day they go for a real job interview and go, what do you mean I didn't get the job? There's 5 other people trying for it. I didn't even get it. And by the way, there were 200 people that applied. What do you mean I didn't get it? They're going to have a nervous breakdown because they can't handle failure, disappointment, rejection.
Well, what they're not teaching kids is that there is such a thing in the world as scarcity. And obviously not in Little League, because everybody gets a trophy, and that's great. But, not everybody makes it to be a major league ball player. Not everybody gets the job they want. And the first time that we ever talked about this on a podcast, I think, the theory that I came up with, and I'm sticking to it, is the Scarlett Johansson, Taylor Swift theory, which is there's only one of them in the world. So, guys, there's only one of you that's going to get to date them or whatever at any given time, or very close to that. Maybe they're juggling 5 or 6 guys at a time. I don't know. But there's that scarcity built in, and you have to realize that you can't get everything you want. Not everybody can date Taylor Swift. If she's watching and wants to date me, my wife said it's fine. Give me a call. You can have Scarlett Johansson. I mean, if I had to choose between the two, there you go.
But that's so true, because they don't know. Their parents never told them. Their parents never told them no. They're afraid to tell their kids no, and then you've created a monster who is bad at school and then needs to settle down. And let's give them a drug to settle down. And it just spins out of control. And then, as I said, you go into the real world or you get out of sport and they're whining and they're complaining. And it's like they do more whining and complaining than if they would have practiced and done something. And how come we didn't win the championship? Well, they were busy practicing while you were busy whining.
Right. And the kid's never going to learn if his parents aren't behind the whole concept that he needs to learn. If the parents are going to blame the teachers, and I'm not saying teachers are never at fault. I'm sure there are some bad teachers out there, but you need to take responsibility for your own kid, and you need to understand that the teacher is there and has 30 or 40 or 50 kids, depending on where you live and what the how big the class sizes are, and you most likely only have 1, 2, or 3 kids. You should be more involved in their life and in their schooling than you probably are if you're blaming the teacher. Now, I'm sure there are rare cases out there where the teacher is just after the student. And if you get a term paper back and the teacher gave you a C or a D, and you take that to another teacher and go, this didn't really seem fair, and that teacher goes, no, well, this is definitely A work, then you have a case. But most likely your kid's a screw up, he's not doing the work, and you need to get involved and let them know. I mean, like you said, be ready for the real world when you realize that for some of these minimum wage jobs, that when a new restaurant or something comes into the area and you have lines down the street of people trying to get the job, you realize really quick that while everybody may have gotten a trophy in Little League, once it comes to getting a job, you're not guaranteed one. And you better be better than the next guy, and you better understand what it takes to have that job if you want to keep it. I mean, there's a lot of people that you run into, if you're a really bad server and you're not good with people, don't become a waiter. If you can't count, don't become a cashier. There's some very
might be some openings things after the Christmas season.
Right. Oh, well, the Christmas season, they'll hire almost anybody to do anything, but then that kind of stuff goes horribly wrong. But this is the world we live in, where I understand where you don't want to make kids feel bad. But you and I talked about this, and he's now my nephew's almost graduating college. And we talked about this, I think, when he was graduating when he was graduating 8th grade, or maybe it wasn't you. Maybe I was talking to somebody else about this. But all right, maybe I'm sure I told you the story that, the teachers told him, you would have been the valedictorian for their little graduation ceremony. But, we can't make the other kids feel bad because,
Right.
It's like this again, the Scarlett Johansson, Taylor Swift theory. There can only be one. But we don't want it. We don't want other kids. It pisses me off that you cannot celebrate the accomplishments of the individual anymore because you're going to make all the other morons feel bad.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how as I said, in Little League also, they sometimes keep throwing the ball until you hit it. There's no balls and strikes, and we don't keep score, and everybody wins. It's like, how do you know when the game's over? Just play 9 innings and have a nice day, or how do you know? Did you feel good about that? Did you, if you keep losing, I'd say we're doing something wrong. We need to improve. If we keep winning, keep doing what you're doing. If there's no way to gauge it, I don't know how we're doing.
And I get that. First year, kids getting into T-ball, something like that, to make it fun. Maybe the first season, or maybe even just the first few games of the first season. Nobody keeps score. We're not here to make anybody feel bad. But everything else in life is a competition. Getting dates, competition. Getting jobs, competition. Making more money than the next guy, competition. Everything literally is a competition. And, if you're not ready for that, and the alternative to that, and I guess it's very... It's a good time to talk about it since we have one of the main finalists for the Democratic nod for the President of the United States. Bernie Sanders is a self-avowed socialist who thinks you should literally pay 90% of what you make back to the government. And if that's where this country is, and you know what, God bless everybody, if that's what the majority of people will vote for, then we've just given up. We've given up on trying to be unique. You've given up on trying to be superior. You've given up on trying to one-up the next guy. And the world is screwed. The world is absolutely screwed if that's the case, because as much as people bitch and moan, and are there cases where pharmaceutical companies totally screw people? Sure. But pharmaceutical companies are the ones that are trying to come up with new drugs that will cure things like cancer, that if there was no money involved in it, they wouldn't be doing it.
Right.
And the government has not proven that they can do it. I mean, when's the last big freaking thing that came out of a government lab that was taxpayer supported? What was the last big, accomplishment? Sending a man to the moon, perhaps.
Moon, yeah. I was going to say space shuttle, yeah.
So I mean, really, this is where we're at, and we don't understand that all of these companies that people want to say are bad, are they making money? Sure, but they're also doing very good things, and
Well, public service announcement. There's 3 million homeless people in America, and I saw that there's 18 million vacant homes, all ranging in different size and quality and whatever. So you've got 6 times more vacant homes than you do homeless people in America. Can't we move? That means every homeless person could have a choice of 6 houses to get into if there was, like you said, money involved in helping them get those homes.
Right. And you just turned into a ghost, man. What happened? You get like a spotlight thrown on you?
No.
Everything's
good.
Back away from anything that's lighting you up there. Okay, that's better. Yeah, but it's there's problems that can be solved, and we have some very different personalities. We have some very different viewpoints going on between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And this isn't a political podcast. Otherwise, we could go on for hours. I would just recommend to anybody, be informed. And that doesn't mean going to just MSNBC. That doesn't mean just going to Fox News. Finding a true news outlet that doesn't have a bias these days may be harder than finding an honest person in it's getting really hard to know and differentiate between the truth and what is lies. So definitely check different sources. For if you really want an interesting take on the world, I highly recommend the podcast No Agenda by John C. Dvorak and Adam Curry, because they cover all of this stuff, and they don't have a Republican bias. They don't have a Democratic bias. If on either side, they're more than willing to call bullshit, and that's really what we need from a media. And it's interesting because you look back, if you know your history at all, there's always been bias in the people that write and cover the news, but they were very careful up until fairly recently to keep that bias out of the reporting, report just the facts, and because that was the only way you would have a job, because that was what was expected. And now we have a world, and you and I, we're talking heads. All we're doing in a podcast is giving our opinion. Whether we're right or not, hell, I don't know. I think I'm right. You think you're right. But we're not giving you vitally important news. We're just talking about crap we see at the dentist, or, when we go to the grocery store.
Or the news we've heard.
Right.
The version of the news we've heard. So.
Right. And we're living in a completely different world now. You've got things like Netflix, that, video that can be beamed anywhere in the world, which was an interesting story this past week. There were two things in the big video streaming world, which, if you're watching YouTube, obviously you're interested somewhat in video streaming. Netflix said we're going to really clamp down on people using VPNs, which are virtual private networks, which means you can be in any country in the world. If you subscribe or have a VPN in the United States, you can watch Netflix as if you were in the U.S. So it's one of these things where any of these streaming companies that they try to keep their product locked down by where you are in the world, VPNs can take care of that. And these companies don't like it. So Netflix said they were going to start really coming down on that. And then somebody pointed out that that's almost impossible to do. And then Netflix kind of backed down a little with, yeah, we know. So they're upset about it. They want to make a press release, so they're going to try to do something about it. But they realize that it's nearly impossible to block it. And then you had Major League Baseball, who just pisses me off with half the stuff that they do. Their normal yearly thing to watch every team in Major League Baseball in beautiful high definition was like $140. Now they're coming out with, well, you could just buy one team for like $85.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cheaper, but one, it's not a great deal. And two, they still are really kowtowing to the Comcast and the DirecTVs of the world, because even if you buy the whole plan, if you want to watch your local team, you're still subject to the blackouts unless you have Comcast or unless you have DirecTV. You have to prove to them that you have cable or satellite. So you have to subscribe to the Major League Baseball plan. And then you also have to have Comcast or DirecTV to watch this stuff over the internet. If you don't have Comcast or DirecTV, you could watch every other team except the one in your market. Which it's like, the whole point of cutting the cord was that, and literally for me, I need internet all the time. But I've gone through this conversation with Comcast a few times when I call for a better price, when they're like, I like doing this the best right about March or April, because they're like, well, what do you watch? And I'm like, well, for the next 6 months, Comcast Sportsnet. White Sox games. That's pretty much it. Because the summer is full of reruns, and every night there's a 3 to 4 hour baseball game on. That's what I watch 99% of my TV during the summer. I'd love to be able to cut that cord for all 6 of those months and just watch the games over the internet. Would save me a little bit of money. MLB doesn't want to let me do that yet, so shame on MLB. Get rid of the blackouts. I don't want to be blacked out. I want to, this is the new world. You can get anything on the internet. Why are we still sticking to these blackouts? Look at what happened to the Blackhawks. They used to not show the games, the home games, in the local market on TV. And this seems like the dark ages now, but this was just like 12, 13, 14 years ago that the Chicago Blackhawks weren't showing their home games because the owner was scared that it would hurt ticket sales. What happened when they put the games on the TV here? Well, they sell out every game. I mean, granted, they're winning championships on the rate of like one every 2 years, but
what creates more of an interest, so people want to go to the game. It's like watching a rock concert versus, you watch enough rock concerts, you'll say, I want to go to that concert, so you'll go.
Well, that's
that is a
Well, that's it. Did you see the story this week? There was a Metallica tribute band in Canada. Did you see this?
No.
They got to a club, and they've been a Metallica tribute band for over 10 years. Never had a problem whatsoever. I forget what the name of their band was, but their logo.
Alcoholica.
could have been. And their logo was very similar to the Metallica logo, but with their name and all that. But they're a Metallica tribute band up in Canada. They get to a gig at a bar wherever it was, and they had like a 45-page letter from a lawyer from Metallica's lawyer's office, ceasing and desisting them using their logo and all this other stuff. So the band posts this to the internet, which is what happens in these days. And Metallica catches wind of it, and Metallica's like, we didn't tell them to send that. Metallica goes to their management, and the management's like, we didn't tell them to send that.
Oh.
So the Lars from Metallica actually ended up calling the singer from this band, telling him, just file that paperwork right in the garbage can. We like what you're doing. Keep on keeping on. And he closed. There was something posted from Metallica online that particular lawyer is now looking for employment.
Wow. Was it even part of their staff or just some guy on his own?
It was somebody from their lawyer's office that decided that these guys were infringing. And but you can
probably
see
going to get Employee of the Month too.
Right, maybe. But look
what I found.
It is the music business. I get it. There's a lot of and it's an interesting thing. This whole internet thing has changed the music business in so many ways. Where the artists, even the artists that were the most secretive, that always tried to shut down bootlegs and all this other kind of thing, it's impossible to stop videos, or at least small video clips from your latest shows from popping up on the internet. There's no two ways about it. And what it comes down to, like you just said, people are exposed to the music. They may be people that have never bought your music, never have heard it any other way. They're going to become fans, and this is a good thing for you. I mean, Metallica understands Metallica tribute bands. Metallica can only be in one city at any given time playing a show. If there's thousands of tribute bands, even if they're playing little bars, that's new people that might be exposed to Metallica music who've never heard it before. And it's a good thing. The internet is a good way to learn about new artists. Artists getting paid is a little bit harder to figure out on the internet. But
remember MTV, the countdown? You'd have to wait and see if, a song you liked was in like maybe the top 10, and then sit there and listen to them all in the final hour and wait. And then you'd hear it once. Now you want to hear your favorite song or video, you play it.
Right. You used to have to try to, tape record it, and then you would try to then bounce that to something else. You could just keep the best stuff that you wanted. And now everything. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if you even need to watch late night television anymore, because all of the segments are on YouTube or they're on the particular network's website the next morning, which the big thing this past week or so was Adele doing the ride along with James Corbin. He's the British guy that does the Late Show now. And they did carpool karaoke. So the host drives, and then the musical guest comes in, and they play songs on the radio, and they sing along to it or whatnot. And it was a huge segment. I mean, and the YouTube segment was just it was phenomenal, the amount of views that it had. And there was an article that talked about how this whole thing came about, because Adele is basically, I think she's selling even more than Taylor Swift. So it tells you the amount of records that this woman is moving. So super huge star. And of course, maybe it helped that she's British and, he's British. They're like, well, here's how it came about. We ran into her and her manager like a year ago when we were just putting the show together. They hadn't even done a show yet. And asked, hey, when we do this, would you guys like to do something? And they said, sure. And the producer's like, okay, so the time came where, I had to call, reach out to Adele's people. And he's like, I sent, an email to her manager, like, yeah, you remember like 9 months ago we talked, and, you guys said you might be interested in doing something, is that still on? And he's like, yeah, we got an email right back that said, sure, what were you thinking? And they're like, okay, I sent him an email saying, hey, here's, we do carpool karaoke. Could we get Adele to do that? And he's like, I got an answer within 5 minutes that said, sure, how is 12:15 on this date? You can pick Adele up here. And he's like, did somebody hack my email? I mean, is this really,
Wow.
It was so easy. And they had her scheduled in for an hour. She was having so much fun, they did it for a little over 2 hours and cut it down to one 15-minute segment. But, it was interesting to see because it's a much different, if you've seen late night interviews, and we all have, they're all pretty much the same, and they're a little more formal because, you're on a stage, there's an audience in front of you, and there's a certain amount of still formalness kind of going on where you get two people in a car just talking and singing along to the radio. It was really cool to see. And it was to see somebody who sells as many records as she does, was very down to earth. My favorite part was the guy that's the host. He used to be on a show called Ned and Stacey, was big in the, over in England. And I actually saw him in Doctor Who. He was in a few episodes of Doctor Who. And he was in a movie that there was a British guy that sang opera. And he was on Britain's Got Talent or whatever, was one of those shows like that. And he ended up winning that. Well, he played this guy. So I'm guessing he had some musical training because in the movie he does the singing, does a really good job. The minute him and Adele start singing, he pulls up and goes up to the next octave and starts harmonizing. And she gives one of these, she takes her head and she's immediately whiplash looking at him with her eyes like, oh my God, you can sing. So it's
go on.
It's I just thought that was genius. I just thought that was absolutely brilliant that, it really humanized her a lot more. She just seemed like a normal girl down the street who just happens to be selling, 45 billion records a day or whatever it is.
Well, like you said, number one, you got in the car. It's more, you feel like you're there with them. Like you said, you took the studio audience out of it. You're there in the car. You're in a closed space like that. So it's more intimate. You're with them. And then also when they're singing or something, or like you said, it's more serious when you're on stage. Remember, when Robin Williams was giving an interview, he'd always be dancing around, running around like crazy. I mean, I think he'd have all this energy built up. He'd have to stand up at some point and do an impression or something. I'd love to see him inside the car. I don't know, because I mean, you're moving. He can't get up. He can't step out. He has to do something. He'd be freaking out in the car. That would be, that would have been a good segment to do with him.
Right. So it's a genius segment. And in the article about how this all came about, again, because this is the late show. This is the show that comes on 12:30 Central Time. So, you're ready into the next day. Most people don't stay up that late. But they were getting a ton of YouTube hits. And the first artist that came in that didn't just have a new album out was Stevie Wonder, because he was on and he was just promoting that he was out touring. And he was on the YouTube of him doing carpool karaoke, got a ton of YouTube hits, and all of a sudden in the UK, his greatest hits popped into the top 40. And in the US, it started selling a lot more than it had been. And it was a very clear cause and effect that you appeared on this show and did this segment and sales went up. So now they're like, yeah, we have no problem getting anybody to do this now. It's very easy because it's now a proven entity rather than, hey, we're just a little, if we were to call up and try to get Adele on our podcast, I'm pretty sure no, probably wouldn't happen. Be like, how many viewers you got? And we're like, 3.
Does my mom count? No.
Right. She doesn't watch every episode. We can't count on her. We have 2, 3. Oh, besides us, 1.
Oh,
I don't know.
Bruce in Denver is always around.
Right. We're new. We're growing. So tell a friend if you like what we're doing. And if you don't, feel free to email us and tell us that we suck. Just don't go on and on about it. Just you suck is fine. Just put it in the subject line. You don't even have to put anything beyond that. But, that whole thing proved that YouTube, internet video, and that are just doing some amazing things. And why stay up and watch the stuff? Because it's all going to be on the next morning. You know, you don't even have to worry about taping it. You're going to be able to watch it on your cell. I mean, that's the beauty of it. If you commute to work, you can watch this on your cell phone. You don't even have to worry about, anything else. It's just always there. The content is always there, which is the way podcasts are. You know, this is just the world that we're going to, is that the content is always there for you to watch. You don't have to worry about recording it. It just exists. With that said, this kind of segues a little bit into the next segment, which is talking about our, personal data, personal information, which, again, following the political landscape right now, Hillary Clinton let a little bit of a bomb drop where there were people, this was widely covered, there were people from the Obama administration who were going in and talking to people like Google and Facebook because they're worried that bad guys, terrorists, whatever, are using things like Facebook and Google to communicate, and the government doesn't have backdoors. It doesn't have ways to monitor this. And the story that came out was all of these people shut them down immediately and said, hey, you know what, we're more worried about our customers. We understand that there's ways to use anything for bad, but they didn't think it outweighed putting a backdoor in, for the NSA or the FBI. They, on the outside said, we don't think that's a really good idea. Hillary Clinton made a comment to a reporter that wasn't what she heard happened. Wow. So understand that, I understand it's easy to sound paranoid about this kind of stuff, but if your data is important to you and you don't want it accessed, here's the way I look at it. Some people might say, hey, I don't care if the government can access my Facebook photos. And most people, that's probably true, but if somebody's putting a back door in for the government, that just makes me think it's like 5 billion times more likely for anybody to then hack in and get access to your information. So it's one of those things to where, be safe, really be careful about what you're uploading to Facebook. Only do things you don't want if you don't want somebody else to see it, don't post it. Don't post it to the cloud anywhere without encrypting it, because your data is just only so safe. And we're in a time right now where people are, arguing that your cell phone data, if you get pulled over or if you commit a crime, that your cell phone, you should be forced, you should have to unlock that to give law enforcement access to that, which, you have to be honest. I mean, it makes a certain amount of sense, because if you're a criminal, you probably have incriminating evidence on your phone. You're talking to
on their Outlook, rob bank at 3 p.m.
But
I meant to erase that. Yeah. You didn't check this off. No, I didn't get to it today. I'm a procrastinator.
Yeah, I only got to one bank today. Sorry about that.
Yeah, because you only charged me for the one, right? All right.
Thank you. Because you laugh, but that's absolutely true. And there may be things that if keeping your personal information safe. It's again, I don't think you have to be paranoid to be worried about this kind of stuff when you're moving things back and forth, when you're using, different backup systems. A lot of people use, things, Carbonite. There's a bunch of different systems. I don't want to just single them out, because most of these places will encrypt your data, but how safe that is really anybody's guess. And, you're responsible for your own data. You're responsible for your own privacy. And, I highly recommend, if you're going to be sharing anything over the internet, learn how to encrypt it. There's different software out there that can help you with that. One is called VeraCrypt, V-E-R-A Crypt, that you can create different drives. And this is the it's a fork of TrueCrypt, which was in the news about a year ago, when all of the guys that were involved in the production of TrueCrypt went, we're out of here. Just gone. They left. They abandoned the whole project, and people were, speculating that, the NSA wanted them to put a back door in, or the FBI, and they were just like, hey, we're done. It's open source software, so people have been able to audit it. It seems pretty safe. Nobody found a backdoor or anything like that. This VeraCrypt takes their code and is continuing to build upon it. And it's the perfect software for people that are truly paranoid, because you can actually have a hidden operating system or more hidden files encrypted within the first. You're hiding encryption within encryption, which gives you basically if somebody says, hey, we know that this drive you have is encrypted, Shark, give us the information on how to decrypt it. You can give that to them, and they'll still have no idea, even after they decrypt that there's more encrypted crap hiding in there. So, I mean, this is just kind of like mind-blown kind of stuff. But if you want to keep your stuff safe, and if you just, if you happen, again, there are countries out there that will, give you the death penalty for just having certain opinions, or for, blogging, in certain countries, a varying viewpoint from what your government may have. This encryption could save your life if you need to really make sure again, keeping your information safe, keeping it secure, keeping your anonymity. But of course, the minute you connect to an internet service, certain stuff can be traced back. So you have to be really and truly careful about that. But
was the backdoor used? I'm sure I'm answering this for some other people listening too, or at least asking it for that. Is the backdoor used so they could monitor everything all the time, or in case we need to get in because there's a few suspicious people who are doing other suspicious things somewhere else, and we want to zero in on them?
Well, that's really the question. Yep. And what it would be used for, that's really the rub in all of this, because, you could say, well, hey, if they're only going to use the back door to, check on X, Y, and Z, that would be fine. But you're giving them now the back door. So what they're going to do with it is really anybody's guess.
Well, right. I mean, they could, use codes for stuff, or I don't mean like codes like program. I mean like
right. What you're saying
you always watch MASH.
The terrorists probably aren't going, well, let's blow this place up at this time. It's like
right.
It's code, Shawshank. I mean, here you go.
Right.
It's code, Blackhawk 1.
Like in MASH, when they say Bo Peep, it's Snow White, and Queen Victoria. Just there's different names for different people and all that, and it's. I mean, the sentence itself doesn't make any sense, which is suspicious, but
right. But you don't know what it means. That's
somebody's
that's the
calling
whole thing.
Somebody Queen Victoria, red flag, red light, and like yeah.
Well, there's so many ways. I mean, there's ways to hide text messages, to a certain point, because obviously, once the images start getting too big, but there's ways to embed text messages within a JPEG image, which every website in the world has image files on it. There's actually software that you could take a picture. I could type my message in, like you said, little Bo Peep is in the hill, and I could put that in this message, and anybody else going to that website won't find it unless they know to take that picture and run it through particular software, which is going to pull that message out. So there's a lot. I mean, really, if you've ever been interested in clandestine, how spies work and how messages are passed back and forth, the technology, it's a hard word to say too. The technology we have now is absolutely fantastic with what you can do with this kind of stuff. And, I've messed around with a few different products that were supposed to, be safer, little USB drives and that. But, this using TrueCrypt, and of course, I put that on a drive once and then totally forgot it was on there, and then formatted it and, blew whatever was on there. But this was just stuff I was kind of playing around with. I wasn't hiding governmental secrets. But what happens on these, like the thumb drives, if you format the whole drive in this VeraCrypt, when you put that drive into a Windows machine, it's going to give you an error that says, this is not formatted. You need to format the drive before you can use it. So anybody else that puts this drive into their machine is going to be, it's just an empty drive. It hasn't been formatted yet. You close that little warning, and then you go into VeraCrypt and you click mount and you put the password in or the key file or whatever you use to secure this, and all of a sudden that data shows up. So it's, it's really interesting that, the things that you can do, and we've kidded around a little bit, but I think it could be a genius for a book idea, which is how to get away with, having an affair or cheating in the technological age, because people don't realize how much information your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse can get from your cell phone or your laptop or your tablet or, a variety of other things. If you have a smart car, little GPS trackers, it's illegal, but you can get a GPS tracker for under $200 that I can, stick in the wheel well of your car, which will tell me where you are. I mean, it's one of those things to where, again, hey, people might say you're paranoid, but it doesn't mean they're not out to get you. Where, you can see this stuff all the time. The technology is there, and it's relatively inexpensive that if you want to spy on nearly anybody, it can be done.
It sounds like a good fiction story where you just buy a car and the dealership didn't know that was already installed, and somebody is watching where that car is going, and you buy that car, like almost like Enemy of the State, where he gets, the package or whatever, and he doesn't even know he has whatever they're looking for. He's like, why are they after me? Like that type of thing. That'd be
right. Well, that's a good way if you want to like mule drugs over. You sell the car cheap in Mexico to somebody that's going to the United States, and you put a GPS on it, and you load your drugs up in it, and then boom.
Somebody's sitting there going, that's a good idea.
Right, see? We're here to provide the good ideas for all sorts of illegal activities that you may or may not want to be doing.
Not held responsible for any of the above. Thank
right.
you. It's only entertainment.
Right. It's strictly entertainment, not meant to be legal advice in any way,
not
shape,
legal
or
advice.
Form. It's like you better call Saul. I mean, that's what I love the best about Breaking Bad was Saul and the offshoot of his own show, Better Call Saul. I just love a show about a lawyer with very questionable morals. I don't know if you ever saw Breaking Bad, but when
parts of it, yeah.
When Walter White and Jesse run across him for the first time, if I'm remembering this correctly, because it's been a while since I've seen it, they basically think they have to kill him. And he's got, they've got him in the middle of the desert. He's on his knees. They're talking about whether, they're going to blow his head off or whatever. And as Saul is, he's like, give me $1. And they're like, what? He's like, give me $1. I'm a lawyer. The minute you give me $1, I'm your lawyer. I can't say anything. I can't repeat any of this to anybody.
That's slick.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps. It's better than getting your head blown off, I suppose. But
I've only got 4 quarters.
I'll take it.
Take it.
Quarters good enough. My rates went down, man. My rates have gone down by a lot. But really, it's one of these things where we love technology because it does a lot of great things for us, but you have to know the downside. I mean, I'm still paranoid enough to unplug the webcam when it's not being used. I finally did see somebody selling something similar to this, or maybe it was they were on maybe on Shark Tank, where there was somebody that had a phone that but they were like $1,000 a piece. That one, they had a thing that came down and blocked the camera, but it also blocked the microphone, and it actually emitted white noise. So if anybody was able to turn on the microphone for your phone, this case would basically be feeding so much loud white noise into it, they wouldn't be able to hear anything. I'm still waiting for just the cheap, $50 iPhone case that just simply, the audio doesn't bug me as much as the video. I would like to be able to easily cover up the cameras on my iPhone and so I know that video's not being hacked in any way, shape, or form. And it's one of those things to where, I know a lot of people take their iPhones into the toilet. And that's fine. But if somebody hacks your camera, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some video there of you dropping a deuce that they may use against you, or whatever things you may be doing in front of your phone.
Now, now you're what was it, Smexting or yeah,
You're
all that.
smexting.
It's a new one.
Well, sexting is,
Right.
yeah. I mean, sexting's another problem that we've got going on here. As we talked about that before too. How easy it is for guys to get pulled into that whole world of a fake person, especially on a dating site or whatnot. So it's like this. This all comes down to the same thing, which is keep your information safe, and for guys or women that really want to cheat, we could write a book that would give you the information, which, like you pointed out to me immediately, was, if you wrote a book about how to cheat in the technological age, it would immediately be purchased by people trying to catch people that are cheating. So it's really a
Right.
dual purpose. By me pointing out what to do, that would also help the people trying to catch the other person.
What do you call that? Recon or covert or recon, where you're doing the opposite. You're figuring out what, like, reverse engineering what they're doing, so you're now
Right.
using it as defense.
Right, because if I tell you, hey, well, go get a second cell phone, because your iPhone has a GPS tracker in it. So if your wife sees that you're leaving the office for 2 hours and you're at the no-tell motel, that's bad. But if you just put the phone in your drawer and you leave, then it's like,
Right.
why weren't you picking up my call for 2 hours? You need a burner phone that you could forward your phone to, so she still gets the GPS from your office, but if the phone rings, you can still pick it up. You got to think like 3 steps ahead.
And then you make the mistake of having your mistress pick up the phone. I told you not to pick up my phone. All this work I do.
Never pick up the phone. Never, ever pick up the phone. But, that's, it's interesting. I mean, it's one of those things where everybody that, and it makes a certain amount of logical sense, which is why it's hard to refute, or you seem like maybe you're being a dick or something. But the whole, hey, why do you worry about what's on your phone when, if law enforcement wants to look at it, you have nothing to hide, right? It's like, well, yes and no. I mean, there's a certain amount of privacy that is expected as an American citizen if you're not being accused of breaking a law. If they don't have a court order, I'm pretty sure I don't want you snooping through my phone. And that's just, again, it's not the point that you have anything necessarily illegal to hide. It just may be embarrassing, or well, it's just private.
Yeah, I don't know. I could see either side. I mean, I guess but regarding selling the book, you're going to sell it to the paranoid people.
Right.
That is your audience.
I love me some paranoid people, because you got to know what you're dealing with, because there are so many people out there that have no idea what encryption is. Not that email is being used a whole lot anymore, because a lot of people are using instant messaging, which isn't necessarily any better. There's a lot of instant messengers out there that don't encrypt your shit from point A to point B, which means anybody can read it. Emails are as wide open as a postcard. Most people don't understand that either, which is why, this whole thing, the whole email scandal with Hillary Clinton or any other politician, emails, if they're not encrypted and not handled in a very specific way using very specific software, it's between point A and point B, anybody can read that message. And people don't understand that emails don't go from, if FJ Shark, if you send an email to me, it doesn't go from your computer to, say, Comcast computer to me. There's a bunch of other systems that it flows through. At any given point, it can be intercepted, and anybody can keep a copy of that, and anybody can read it because it's out there in the open, rather than being secured. So you have to understand these things. At least if you understand the technology, it gives you a better chance of, no matter what you're doing, not getting nailed.
They should spend the time going over the people that keep sending the spam of, hi, I'm a prince in a foreign country, and then we just need some information. Go after that guy.
I need to pull out $5 million, and I'll give a lot of that to you, but you're going to need to send me 100,000 first.
Like, okay, figure out that, fix that guy first. And
Well, that's the joy of the internet. And, and there's really, we can just talk briefly about the concept of anonymity on the internet. And it's one of these things where logically I understand both sides of it. Coming from a still free country, I have less to worry about using my real name. Now, if I was in China and I was saying things against the government, I wouldn't want to use my real name, nor would I want to post anything from my home address or anything like that. But there are services out there, which Facebook is doing a really a decent job of getting rid of anonymous accounts, getting rid of accounts where people are using not the real name, which I'm surprised nobody's come after you yet. Although you could prove you have a reason on Facebook to use FJ Shark, even though that's not your legal name. I know people might be really just shocked to hear that that's not your legal name. But you have a reason to use that. You can show them, hey, I've got a book. I've been doing this for 20, 30 years using this name. So they'd say, okay, you can use that. But if you were just to pull up an imaginary name today and go create a Facebook account and try to friend a bunch of people, they're going to be like, this isn't a real name. And they're going to shut you down. Well, what they're going to do is they're going to ask you for your license for a copy of that, which I don't know how hard it is to fake that because you're only sending them a copy, right? You're not sending them your real license. So I'm not really sure how hard it is to come up with a fake license with your fake name. But it definitely helps people who don't want to get that involved to then create because they want you to connect it to a phone number. They want you to send them an ID, a photocopy, or a scan or a picture of your ID. So they're at least doing something to break down the anonymous accounts. Now, Twitter, this has been in the news lately that in Twitter it's the way it is. Twitter, there's going to be people that harass because it's an anonymous thing. You can go onto Twitter. You can make your name anything you want. And I think that is why Twitter works. I mean, is there the possibility that somebody's going to be harassed? But who cares? You're going to get harassed in your daily life. Unless we're going to make it illegal for somebody, to see you walking by and go, hey, moron. If we're making that illegal, then we're not really a free country anymore, and we can revisit all of this. But
that goes full circle to the kids who, frustrated, rejection, failure. Somebody's harassing me. Because little Jimmy, somebody looked at my sandwich, and now that kid's in trouble because why were you looking at Jimmy's sandwich? I don't know. I had a taste for a sandwich.
Jimmy's mom knows how to make a real nice sandwich.
Yeah, it's like, but that's the kind of stuff you hear in kindergarten, first, second, third grade, where it's like these petty things. And I teased the one principal who went from the lower grades up to junior high. I said, you're trading problems, right? You're trading somebody, looked at me the wrong way. Somebody looked at my sandwich. Somebody, won't give me back my pencil. You're trading those problems for possibly drugs, drinking, getting arrested at work, coming into school drunk. There's a whole new set of problems. Nobody's worried about you didn't give me back my pencil anymore, but now it's like, let's have the police dog sniffing your locker because they think there's something suspicious in there. Now you got a whole new set of problems.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And that's, where it's, again, Twitter is like real life. I mean, there's a certain amount of anonymity until you're going to be forced to, put your number on your head, wear your ID out so everybody can see it. There's again, this comes down to privacy, and this comes down to what you should expect to have as far as an amount of privacy. And I don't, I understand there are people that will just make Twitter accounts to be nothing but be dicks, but some people are like that in the world. And you can block those people. At least, you can't do that in the real world. On Twitter, you can do that. The minute you block somebody, they can't message you. They can't read what you're saying. You can lock your tweets down if you don't want to be a public person. The ability is there to do that. I don't want to see Twitter get to the point to where you have to use your real name, even though I do, and force you to, force everybody to do so, because a lot of the accounts that I enjoy, being a Chicago White Sox fan, are the guy that's not Rick Hahn. Rick Hahn is the GM of the White Sox. This is a guy that posts as not Rick Hahn. I mean, there's not every celebrity out there, at least one, There's a not Taylor Swift. It's like, and they post snarky, over the top things because it's comedy. And that's what it's supposed to be. If you all of a sudden force everybody to use their real name, Twitter becomes a lot less useful.
And fun.
Right. It becomes a lot less fun. And I know their stock has fallen down to what it was or below what it was when they did the IPO. So Twitter's in trouble. Which I can understand because they're basically just a text messaging service who has totally lost their way by allowing people to post video, post, GIFs and animations and all this other kind of thing, which while is great on one end, what made it special was that it was only 140 character little text things that were kind of easy to go through and follow. And now everything is media and it's a much different ball game, which you may as well be on, if you start opening up the amount of characters that you can use and you're allowing video and all this other stuff, you may as well just be Facebook.
Well, yeah, like my daughter said, a lot of people, they just moved over to Instagram and forgot about Facebook. If you're probably under 25, Facebook is like a ghost town to them. And if you're over 35 or 40, it's the greatest thing because you get to keep in touch with all the people you went to school with. Yay. Because you didn't have that. You had to physically have their phone number, call them up once in a while. Nobody had time or bothered to write letters. You caught up at, weddings, funerals, and if you happen to see somebody walking down the street. Other than that, you didn't, catch up with them unless you were in some kind of a group that regularly met on, a couple times a year that would go to lunch. So that's, we didn't have what the technology now growing up. We wish we did. That's why we appreciate it. The other people are like, oh, I don't want to hear that my Aunt Susie says my new dress looks good or my dress is too short at the dance. So I don't want to associate with my family on there. Well, I don't know. You and I, we weren't in high school during this time. Right. If this age of technology was in high school time, there'd be a ton more pictures, videos, all these other things going on that, in our mind, we didn't walk around with a camera.
Right. Well,
even if it was a Polaroid, we didn't walk around and go, hey, let's snap a picture.
And that's the interesting thing with Instagram. Again, if you're talking about safety, especially if you're talking about, younger women, teenage girls that are going to send out a picture to where somebody will know immediately right where you're at because Instagram's instantaneous and it goes out there. But, it's a big thing. I mean, Instagram it's amazing to me because it's basically, Twitter by adding the pictures was trying to become Instagram, but Instagram kind of spawned from Twitter as a side thing. And, so it's interesting. Facebook, there's different uses for these things. I applaud somebody like Facebook who wants to force people to use their real names and to keep a safer environment that you can only interact with the people you want to interact with. Twitter isn't like that. Twitter is exactly the opposite, which is everything you post, unless you specifically block everybody else, as a default, everything you do on Twitter is completely 100% public, and you want that. I mean, you want the hashtags. You want to be able to find new people who share the same views as you do, and it's absolutely brilliant for that. Like I said, being a Chicago White Sox fan, it's nice to talk to your friends that are also fans, but I, now follow a bunch of people on Twitter just because they were talking about the White Sox. They were using certain hashtags. You start following these people, and there's a decent sized group that interacts on a daily basis over what's going on in the White Sox nation or whatever you want to call the fan base, and that is perfect for that. And I don't think anybody should have to give out necessarily their real name and location and all of this if they don't want to. And again, it's like for me, we've talked about this with so many different things. As a guy, for one, as somebody that's 6'6", I'm a lot less intimidated by there's somebody that's going to stalk me or somebody that's going to follow me or whatever. Now, for young, attractive women, it's a completely different ballgame to where I think they should be able to go on Twitter and take part in these conversations, but not have people know specifically who they are if they don't want that.
Yeah.
So there's uses definitely for everything. And it all comes down to, again, making sure your data is safe, making sure you're smart about what you're doing. And again, a book could definitely be helpful on so many different levels. And it's interesting because it would really be, maybe it's more of a cautionary tale where, it's a lot of people just take so much of this stuff for granted that you don't realize that, that cell phone sitting on your nightstand all night could be hacked into by, one of your neighbors who's now watching and listening to everything that's going on.
Well, then maybe that's the point. You're still selling to the paranoid people, but instead of
really,
saying,
it does seem to be everybody everybody. If you're paranoid, mailbag at mancaveconfidential.com. I'm the guy you want to talk to, because I can tell you how to. If you're paranoid, I can at least tell you how to keep your crap safe. Using encryption, using something like VeraCrypt, where you could have a completely hidden operating system and a whole. You could be anything that you would be doing on that hidden operating system. Nobody would ever be able to find. So right. It's there are certain things, and again, if
you are the protector of the paranoid,
right? I am the protector of the paranoid. I'd be more than happy to let you know how all this kind of stuff works out, and and how to use the technology for your advantage, because there's a lot of people that just assume that everything they see is accurate. And if you're the the wife that thinks your husband's cheating on you and you're watching his movements via his iPhone and are using that as your main means of saying, well, no, he isn't. I can see exactly where he is. Well, now I might be blowing your mind by letting you know that data you're getting might not be real.
Or there could be a second cell phone at the office, which is where the bill goes and everything else. Hey, you don't have to be a genius on that one.
Right. Well, it's so easy now with all of these credit cards that, will never send a regular bill. I mean, the world is so different than it was 10 or 15 years ago that you can have ways to spend money. You can have ways to move around that aren't trackable. And if you have jailbroke iPhones, or if you're using an Android phone, I know that I haven't played with any of them, but I know there are apps that you can set whatever GPS you want. So you could even say, although, again, this is one of these things where you got to be smart, because if you forget to set it, that's like on the checklist before we're doing the show. You got to do this, this, this. If you forget something, things go horribly wrong. If you just, if you think you set the phone to make it look like it's at your office and you're really at the no-tell motel and you forgot to do that one step, yeah. It's not going to go well. It's not going to go well for you at all. And we're not saying that you should be cheating. And that's really not the point, because it's like, that's not something I advocate. Being married way too many years. It's not something I'm advocating. It's more, again, knowing the technology and knowing how that can be used on both sides of things. And for me, it basically comes from seeing one too many people that I know in relationships that are bad and toxic, as we've talked about before. And, sometimes maybe if you realize that not everything is as it seems, and that you should at least know that other things might be going on, and you could use,
well, that's the thing. You're educating people on this who would swear that that's not possible, and who don't know it's possible. And it could be something very simple. It could be something that might take a few, maybe an hour or two, to train them on what to look for and how to do it. So you're helping them. That would be a great sidebar, and that, we should work on that type of book to protect the paranoid.
Right. Well, it's not just cheating, but it's like, I don't have kids, so I'm not worried about this. Now, you've got 2 teenage kids. You've got really good kids who tell you more things than any kids should ever tell their parents, and I'll applaud you for that one. But most kids aren't like that. And, kids are better at technology than other parents, like 99.9% of the times. So
I'm glad they do tell me what they do. But again, that's only because either A, I'm available, and B, I ask them. Because
see, most parents forget that
don't
part.
Do that.
I ask them. Why did your kids tell you? Well, I spoke to my kids. You spoke to your kids? Why?
Yeah, I mean, I still get the how was school? It was fine, but I'm still here and available, and ask again in 20 minutes after they've had their, drink of tea and soda and whatever when they come home, and they're, now I'm going to talk about something. Let them come to you. So if you only have those 2 minutes, it's like, okay, tell me everything about school. It was fine. Okay, well, remember I asked you. Okay, bye. And now I'm going to ignore you till tomorrow at this time.
Right. And I'm sure there's a lot of parents out there who are looking at their iPhone screen going, oh, Susie's at the library, right where she said she was. Sure she is. Susie knows how to change her GPS. She's really at the no-tell motel with Jimmy, the quarterback.
And a few others.
Oh!
Hey.
Only you could tell those stories.
We have film.
We have
film at 11.
Film at 11, that would get people to tune in. Technology, it's good, it's bad, it can be used against you. That's the main thing we're going to talk about at some point. And really, I guess that would be covering, it's kind of maybe just about the whole surveillance state and because parents want to watch their kids, spouses want to watch their spouses, and sometimes the kids want to be somewhere their parents don't want them to be, and sometimes the spouses want to be somewhere their spouses don't want them to be. And if we can teach
right now, I'm supposed to be typing a book. I'm working on it.
Right.
Okay.
And if we can teach you how to overcome the little tricks they try to use, then you'll be better parents, and maybe you'll be getting a lot more divorces, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if your spouse is hiding things from you. So, hey, we'll cover that on another episode. Until then, if you have questions, mailbag at mancaveconfidential.com. Call the hotline 918-928-CAVE. Hit me up on Twitter at Darren O'Neill. Hit FJ Shark up on Twitter at FJ Shark. Or if you need to figure out women, you can go to his website, womenfiguredout.com. He's going to charge you to buy a book. It'll actually show up in PDF format, and you can read all of the inner thoughts and wisdom from FJ Shark.
Change your life.
It will change. It will add a little bit of excitement to your life. And again, I like your stuff because it's not BS. It's some very basic interpersonal relationship advice on how to figure out what makes somebody tick, and how to then basically start a conversation and a relationship, because some people are just really not out of the box. They're not like that. It's interesting to me because I know people that are, and I used to be a lot more shy. People don't believe that, but there are people that would just rather walk down the hallway and not talk to anybody whatsoever. And there's the other aspect where there's somebody that wants to talk to everybody they see, and that's you want to be more of that second person if you're looking to date. It just comes down to communication, and it doesn't come down to wear a boa and pink nail polish. And
as you get older, you realize that because you care less about what other people think, and you also realize that these people were not even thinking about you at that time. You're like, oh my God, what are they going to say? That person that you're worried about that's going to say something to you, they're so worried about themselves, they don't have time to think about you. Unfortunately, you don't figure that out for 20 plus years.
You can figure it out
30,
earlier.
Or 40 or 50.
You can save all that time by going to womenfiguredout.com, or as we get the shop back up at mancaveconfidential.com, we had a server move. The main website's up. The shop isn't back yet, but check soon. It'll be back up, where you can order all of FJ Shark's audio material for instant delivery
and gratification.
This has not been a paid advertisement by FJ Shark. Until next time, I am Darren O'Neill.
And I'm FJ Shark.
Later.